for your time. I'm going to tell you the story of the Agile Transformations at NN. So this is based on our experience. So to start, it's as you know, the world is really changing, and we have to adapt basically. We've been talking a lot about agility, and there are many companies doing, let's say, team level agile, so they are doing some Scrum. But our understanding of transformations is that we want to transform the whole company, and we want to achieve what we consider enterprise agility. That means how we go from strategy to execution in a kind of multinational environment. So it's an insurance company. And as you mentioned in the introduction, we've been doing that for, I would say, the past 3 years in different countries, and this is more or less our story. So first of all, just to get a brief overview of the company we work. It's a multinational company, Dutch one, with presence in 18 countries, more than 14,000 employees, and basically working in insurance. So as you can imagine, every country is kind of different. We have presence in Europe, in Japan. So, within Europe and Japan, you can find differences, but even within European countries also, languages, etc. Also, as you can imagine, the insurance and industry, it's kind of financial. So it's also a regulated industry. So the type of products we develop are also regulated. There's a lot of change regarding regulation. So it's a kind of, let's say, traditional environment. We're not talking about a startup. We're not talking about a pure software company. So that's more or less our context, just to understand the type of environment we work. And we all know that, there's this VUCA concept of we are having a much more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And if we look at how this translates into our insurance market, we can see several patterns. So first, that at the end of the day, insurance products are also based to some extent in software. So there's a connection with that. We see that there's a lot of new technologies, digitalizing of insurance. We have a scale, so sometimes you also have to think of production at scale, products that can be developed across different countries. You also have new players, fintechs, insurtechs that are also part of the equation. And as a group, we also have innovation in our, let's say, DNA. So how can we play and compete with these new players? As I mentioned before, it's a regulated environment, so there are constantly laws at, let's say, country level, European level, and that you need to comply. And also, customer behavior is changing. Like in every market, everything is much more digital. There are different segments. So how you approach customers, how you manage channels, that's something important to consider in our environment. And also, there's new tools like big data, AI, IoT that eventually you want to also leverage, incorporate in your DNA as a company, and also how you work. The empowerment of people, the way of working, the culture. You also have to adapt. So those are things that at the end of the day, every industry is experiencing, and in our case, more so than maybe in others, and that's something that will basically ask you to change, no? So let's see. So what does it mean? It means that traditionally we have organizations which are kind of top down, where they are very hierarchical. You have a boss of a boss of a boss, so managers and employees. And now, to be more nimble, we need to kind of redefine what organizations are. And that's when you think of enterprise agility, you're not tackling one team, you are not tackling one silo, you're not tackling one function. You should basically try to transform the whole structure, the company, to be able to adapt to this new environment. So somehow we're moving to a kind of team of teams, much more flatter organization, where you want to empower those teams. You want to structure them around value streams at the end of the day, and you want to be much more fast and nimble now. So this is more or less the paradigm shift that you face. And also in terms of leadership, you need to change from kind of command and control, traditional way of managing, where a manager, it's managing the work, it's managing the people, it's sometimes even micro controlling, to a much more soft type of leadership, where you try to empower your people, coach them, develop them, much more on the competences, much more on empathic. So this is something that across the journey will be there. So you cannot transform a company into agility if you still have those traditional command and control behaviors. And this is easy to say and tough to implement, because at the end of the day, this is about people, and changing people takes time. And there are also personality types. For some people, it's easier to kind of become more servant leaders. Others, because the way they are, they find it a little bit more difficult. So this in itself, leadership, it's a big topic, and it will be part of the journey. And so that's just to start the context. So then what's our approach? Since we're doing this across different countries, we believe that there's no one single way of doing things, but the transformation approach we follow, at the end of the day, you see that many companies, they start like using team level agility, maybe in IT, that's normally where you start. But at the end of the day, if you want to extend agility to the whole company, then you need to look into other types of elements like organizational structure, governance models, etc. So in our case, we've been, let's say, scaling Agile across several countries. So this is based on our experience. It's not just some theoretical exercise. And what we see is that there are similarities, some commonalities, and also some specifics. So at the end of the day, it can be done. It's a journey in itself, and you also need to define, okay, what's your case for change? I mean, why are you doing things? You know, at the end of the day, you have to have a reason, and so you need to define, okay, what do we want to improve as a company? What's the purpose of moving into enterprise agility? At the end of the day, you try to solve a problem, you try to improve. So you will need to define these kind of KPIs on how you move in, and also we believe, and I think it's proven, that by having Agile across the company, you will improve your delivery capability. So you will be able to connect, I would say, better your vision, your strategy with delivery. So how all those initiatives from strategic vision to basically team level, how they do connect, how you iteratively plan and execute. And you will also see some improvements in efficiency, in time to market, focus, the purpose, and eventually quality. So the whole purpose of this, it's also improving your delivery capabilities. And how we kind of organize this, and this is based on our model in NN, but and here I'm going to talk about frameworks. There are a lot of discussions about, you know, what is best. And here I would say that, you know, every company is different, every organization is different, and at the end of the day, you have to choose the tools, because in the end, frameworks are just type of tools that you will need to see, you know, what does fit best to your environment and how it makes sense. So maybe what makes sense in an N does not make sense in a smaller company or in a bigger company. So you will have to find your way. I don't think you can say this is better than the other. I mean, it's just a set of tools you have to apply. So in our organizational context, what we found is that we define these kind of building blocks. So we believe that you need to kind of tackle structure. So one way of doing that, and it's just one way, it doesn't mean it's the best way, but one way of doing that, it's inspiring from the Spotify model, which, you know, some people that say it's just not a model itself, and even Spotify, but there are some concepts in the Spotify model that make sense. Like, at the end of the day, tribes could be understood as value streams. chapters, they go into relation with competence development, developing people. So conceptually it makes sense, and squads are agile teams, sort of. So this is something that you can translate, and it can work. In terms of way of working, and this is more or less on the methods, let's say, since we apply agility across the company, we found that, for change teams, you can use Scrum at team level, and for run teams, meaning you can really try to improve and be agile and lean in any area of the company. You can apply it to HR, finance, risk, commerce, whatever. So we believe that Kanban, it's a nice tool to use for run teams across the company. And then for scaling in our context, and maybe in a different company will be different, there are things, elements from SAFe, which we believe they add value. So this combination of Scrum, Kanban, and some elements of SAFe to manage portfolio and program flows, this is something that in our context makes sense. And at the end of the day, there's another big building block. When you transform a company, you will have to also change even physical spaces. The way your offices look like, the spaces you use to work, your digital tools. You might need new tooling to measure things, to work. Tools like Jira or many others. But you will need to also think about, okay, what does it mean on the facilities and physical spaces and digital spaces? Also, another big building block, it's okay. It's just combining business and IT, and also, let's say, development and operations. So at the end of the day, ideally, you want to have mixed teams. So you can have, and we have it, business and IT people, and try to break those silos. You want to have these empowered teams that can deliver as much as possible on their own. And also, being a multinational, you want to have control. I mean, you don't want to break things. You want to have some kind of risk control. So in our context, we also need to think about how Agile impacts risk management. Being an insurance company, risk management is important. How we change finance, the finance, the budgeting in terms of Agile. And then there's another big building block, which, it's called Agile HR, employee experience. And at the end of the day, you need to basically address people-related issues. So these are like the building blocks, and then you can literally combine those in terms of your implementation approach. And the way we see a transformation, and this is a multi-year journey. I mean, you're not going to transform a big company in like 3 months. I mean, this is a process which will take a while. So we believe that, we have this analogy of the mountain, and where at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, it's like building capabilities. So we believe that you need to align the leadership and make sure that you have the buy-in of the leadership. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I mean, if you don't have the buy-in from the top and middle and at all levels of the organization, if you want to transform a whole company, it will not work. We also believe that you need to have a kind of transformation team and Agile Center of Excellence. I will discuss those later on. And then you can start transforming the change organization little by little, also the run. And it doesn't mean you go one layer as a whole. So you kind of set something, put some capabilities, and iteratively build more. So you are incrementally somehow building more capabilities step by step, iteratively, and kind of agile, in an agile way. And we have this concept of the tipping point. As a company, maybe. Are you ready for this journey? And that's a good question, because you need to be ready. So what we see is that there are some kind of patterns where you can feel that you're reaching a tipping point where you might need to go beyond just some IT teams. So you might have some Scrum teams in IT, or you might have 3-4 teams doing Agile, and still you have waterfall projects and a portfolio. Then probably you will feel that managing a hybrid portfolio becomes complex. You will also feel that the more you involve people from business, you will have to reconsider organizational changes and even governance models. So you will start doing some experiments, some pilots, but at some point you will reach this tipping point where you have to say, look, this is starting to look a little bit weird. We need to kind of reconsider this. And once you reach that tipping point, you need to recognize that. And what we also believe is that a transformation journey, it's something intense and that needs, let's say, time. So you need to assess, okay, are we ready? Do we have the right conditions? And that's things like, okay, do we have money for this? The budget? At the end of the day, you will need to do some investments. Do we have the right leadership? Is it aligned? And what I call bandwidth. At the end of the day, you need time, and people will need time. So if you are super busy trying to survive because your market conditions are very tough, maybe it's not the best moment to really spend 1 year plus two with a huge impact in terms of time and change for this. So you need to have this kind of conditions. Also, you need to have a vision for change. You know, what's the purpose of this? You know, what are we going to get in this journey? And it needs to be clear, and it's to be something that can create purpose and alignment and motivation. And you can transform this also in a kind of story and business case for the change. So at the end of the day, it has to make sense. And as I said before, okay, if let's say you qualify and you say these are the criteria I want to follow, then we believe that you need a transformation team, which is a group of people that will lead the transformation. And since also the way of working is going to be huge in terms of impact, you also need another team of people, what we tend to call Agile Center of Excellence. We will support a transformation from, you know, more on the Agile structures, roles, and methods. So what's this transformation team? And that's something I think it works. In our experience, it works. It's just a collection of people from the board. So you want some kind of representation from the board, and you want also some people from different departments like HR, risk in our case, someone kind of in a kind of program management role to coordinate and make sure that as a team we take into account all the things. And you're going to tackle things like, okay, we're going to be driving the change. These people need to drive the change, and you need from the CEO to people in the board to people in middle management. You need to a coalition in the end. It's a kind of coalition of leaders that will drive this change through the organization, because you will get a lot of resistance, pushback. It's not going to be easy. And you will have to reconsider also organizational design. Okay, do we want to change the office, physical spaces? Things like change and culture, HR, you know, it has a massive impact on people. And it's important to consider that this is not just applying a method. This is changing behaviors, this is changing people. So HR needs to be there, and communication, and you will also have to measure this. So like this is a kind of example of one of our countries where you kind of have this combination of people where you have the CEO, CTO, CHRO, like part of the board as part of this transformation team. You have people from HR, you have people from risk, which is kind of specific of our business, but you know, insurance risk is important. And you have people from, let's say, way of working way. So, and also very important, communication. I mean, the amount of communication you have to do when you do a transformation it's massive. So at the end of the day, you want to have people that can work on the organizational design, people and culture, methods, tools, in our context, risk management and communication. So you will need to consider, okay, what's the right transformation team? Who should be there? And what type of, let's say, levels in the organization they should be? And then you also come to these leaders. By definition, they will lead the transformation, but the amount of change you will have to do on way of working, it's also massive. So we believe that setting up a kind of local Agile Center of Excellence makes sense, where you have people that tend to be kind of portfolio, kind of program background, IL coaches, Scrum Masters, depending on the tools that you will use. But anyway, you have to do a lot of training, a lot of coaching. You have to implement new ways of working. Probably you will need to implement new tools, customize those tools, train people. So this is also a massive amount of work, and you want to have those capabilities in-house. And here, you know, you can get support from external consultants, but never outsource it. So we don't believe that you can say our local center of excellence, it's all external people. Probably it will not work. Same thing for the core transformation team. I mean, you can have somebody to support you, but you need people from the company, people that understand the culture, the politics, people behaviors. It has to be something that sticks. And to be able to stick, you need to have people that are kind of in-house. with some external support, but I would say don't outsource a transformation because probably it will not work. And then regarding the center of excellence, you can see some values and characteristics that I believe make sense. Like you need people that understand servant leadership because they will need to kind of build this capability little by little and coach people in what it means. You need people that can build trust because you're going to create new teams, you're going to break silos, and you need to build new teams and create trust. They need to be people that really are passionate about lean and agile because you need to transmit, you need to basically teach people. They are also kind of lifelong learners because, all people that probably were here in this conference, we are into Agile, and as you know, this is a never-ending story. So you learn things, and there will be new things, new tools, new practices. So you need to have this lifelong learning mindset, and you need people that can motivate, that can inspire, that can persuade, and that can also connect. You need people that are kind of empathic. They can understand people's feelings, because at the end of the day, you can have the hard part of this, which is all the tools. You can go to a training in Scrum, a training in Safe, whatever. But there's a very important soft personal component where you really need to build this type of team. And so those would be the key elements that as an approach we see that, okay, you need to be ready. You need to find, okay, are you ready as a company, and set up some kind of teams that will lead the transformation. And then based on those building blocks, we believe that at the end of the day, even in a company as our company, you can have common elements, but every country is going to be different because culture is going to be different, language is going to be different, the size of the company is going to be slightly different, the functions, the politics, the people. I mean, everything is going to be specific. So you need to contextualize your transformation, and that's why we believe, like, as I said, with tools, at the end of the day, you cannot compromise principles. So, the importance is the principles and then how you find your way through those principles. So we have defined these transformation principles that are kind of things that we cannot compromise. And at the end of the day, based on those principles, you can adapt. So some of these principles are, and we have 12, we don't believe that Agile is a goal. It's just a means to an end. And what I'm trying to say here is that you don't transform because, hey, we have transformed. Good. Now we are Agile, tick, done. No, this is not a project. This is a journey, and you should not do Agile because it's a fashion, and let's do Agile because everybody's doing Agile. No, there has to be a purpose, and otherwise it will not work. So it's not a means. It's not a goal in itself, and also. Leadership, you need to basically work with leadership when you're trying to achieve enterprise agility, and you're touching everything from board members to middle management to team level people. You will create new structures. It's a massive change in terms of organization. People will feel disoriented. You will need to manage that transition, and you need leadership at all levels of the company. So those leaders will have to drive it, and you will also have to, remove impediments and coach people on the way. And that's something that you want to have, and you will need to nurture it. It's not going to be there by definition, and you will have to work on that. And also, then when you do a transformation, and you probably all know that, you have to work on both things, like being agile and doing agile. And at the end of the day, you want people to be agile, but this is not going to happen in a day. So you don't go to a 2-day training and, whoa, now I'm agile. No. So normally you have to start doing things little by little, by coaching, by practice, by doing things. You will get into this mindset, and it's something that will eventually happen, but it's going to take a while, and probably every person is going to be different. So some people will click faster than others, but you want to have this perspective that you have to try to make the transformation in the mindset, but you also have to go through the doing thing, because if the doing is chaotic, if the way of working is just a mess, people will automatically say, okay, Agile, it's just chaos. So you have to be very careful that doing Agile, it's also important, because if you screw it, then the being part, maybe it's going to be compromised. And we also believe that, big bangs for transformations where you're talking about hundreds of people, maybe are not the best approach. So we don't believe in these approaches where on Friday everybody goes out to the office and Monday, boom, now we are Agile. No, I think we believe that this is a journey, and it's going to take, as I said, it's going to take a while. You also want to be very cautious, and at the end of the day, have people over process, in the sense that you need to understand how people are reacting to the transformation. You also need to make sure that you don't disrupt business as usual. So you still have to manage the business, you still have to run the business. So somehow you will introduce changes, but you have to keep the performance of the company also stable. And your change capacity, as I said before, the amount of stuff you're going to do, it's huge. So the amount of time people you need to change, it's also going to be limited. So you cannot go super quick. And also the fact that at the end of the day, as I said, every context, even in the same multinational, every organization, it has their own context. People will react in a different way. So you need to fine tune it. And for that, you need time, you need to inspect and adapt. So, okay, you implement new capabilities, you see people reactions, and that's more or less how you iteratively work on this. And as I said before, we have this kind of playbook with building blocks. So there's some kind of global standards as a company, the way we approach it with 18 countries, because at the end of the day, we want some commonalities, but also we believe that, as I said, you have to create local autonomy. So the playbook, the blueprint, the organizational components, okay, those are kind of described, but at the end of the day, you have to define your own locally based on your needs, based on your context. And at the end of the day, the same thing, you need the local leadership. This is, every country will have to create their transformation team, their local center of excellence, because they will have to support the organization. So these are like two capabilities that you also have to build from the beginning to support the transformation, because they are, if you don't have them, you will struggle. If you don't have people that understand what doing agile means and can train and coach people, probably you will not get there. If you don't have leadership that can drive this, you will not get there, because there will be a lot of people pushing back. And also think about it in a kind of holistic, systemic way. This is about systems thinking. We are changing the system. You can understand the organization as a system. You have to change processes, organizational designs, culture, etc. So it's gonna and you have to optimize the whole. So you cannot optimize a company by just modifying something in a team, because that will have connections. So that's something important, that you have to have a kind of holistic systemic view. And as I mentioned before, you need to make sure that you're ready. Before you start, this is a commitment of time, commitment of effort. So you need to understand that, are you ready as an organization to take this transformation? Do you have the buy-in from the leadership? Do you have time, budget? How's the culture? You need to think about all those elements. And also very important, also during transformation, communication is key. And this is also connected with this other principle of people. So you need to communicate everything. You have to understand that communication, there will be people feeling like scared, fears. They will be worried, like maybe, am I going to do the same thing? I'm going to do something else. Who's going to be my new boss? My new, however it is, responsible. So what does this Kanban thing means? What that Scrum? So you want to have to think about, from a communication strategy, how we make sure that people understand what is this journey about, how we make sure that we listen to these people's feelings, and we take those feelings into account to make sure that if they are worried about something, if they have fear, you want to tackle it, and you want to make sure that it's managed. And that's why you have to really listen to people and do this in a kind of iterative way. So you will have some kind of roadmap on things that you want to communicate, but at the same time you have to adapt. And
sorry,
and
just to interrupt.
Yes.
We need to slowly close to the end.
Yes. 2 minutes, 1 minute, and I finish. And this is the last principle. So it's okay. Do it. This Shuhari concept. So start doing things and then adapting. And as I said, the model it cannot be just top down from board to team. It has to be a combination of people on the board, people in middle management, and people in the team. So transform in an agile way. And just to conclude, as I said, this is like a journey. That's the analogy we use. And you have to be ready, because sometimes you will feel like, wow, it's tiring. I'm going to give up. This is not going to work. So you have to be resilient, and you have to persevere and continue, because our story tells it that at the end of the day, if you continue with this, you can do it. And it can be done. And it will be very satisfying, and that would be my key message. It's a journey in itself, but it can be done. Thank you.